after training. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and welcome y'all to our final session of Steward Spring Training 2020, Storytelling with Rose Clement, our Program Communication Director. Rose, I'm going to let you take it away.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, my name's Rose. I'm the Communications Program Manager for Conservation Legacy. And today we're going to be talking about field media. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen with you and pull this presentation up. Okay, can everybody see that? And my helpful facilitator, Josh, is going to be helping out with the chat box today. So Josh, if you could keep an eye on that chat box for me and let me know if there's any questions. And I'll also be just asking you to acknowledge some answers from folks too as we go throughout the presentation. So this is welcome to the Field Media Training for Volunteers in Service to America, or VISTAs. In this presentation, you will learn how to produce high quality, engaging media to document your term of service as a VISTA. If you have questions throughout the presentation, as was mentioned, I'll just ask that you type them in the chat, and Josh will help me answer those questions as we go. And we'll have a few group polls for you to answer as well. And Josh will be pasting the links for the let's go ahead and start off with a question. Can everybody just introduce really quick, since I have my call? Go ahead and type your response in the chat. So what's your name and where are you for your service term? And then a few of those.
I had trouble hearing what was being said, Rose. So can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Everybody type your name and where you're based for your service term in the chat box.
It's still breaking up.
Okay. She's asking that everyone enter their name and their service location into the chat.
And Josh, can you go ahead and read a few of those off and acknowledge a couple?
Sure. We got Noel Bowers, who's beginning at Lincoln Home in Springfield. Seth Myers at the Nature Conservancy in Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Cameron Riddle in Halekulea. Cameron, I don't know if I pronounced that right or not. Conservancy in Hawaii. Let me scroll back up here to some that I missed here. We got Megan Singleton serving at the Friends of Kenilworth Aquatic Gardens in DC. I'll read one more here. We got Julia at New Bedford Whaling National Historic Park and New Bedford Art Museum in New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
You're welcome.
Thanks for sharing. And start the presentation. So I just want to start by welcoming everybody to Conservation Legacy. We are a nationwide nonprofit organization that supports locally based service organizations, of which Stewards is one. You can learn more about each of our programs on our website, which is at conservationlegacy.org. You can visit our blog, The Field Guide, to hear stories from across the organization. That's guide.blog, and just a good opportunity to stay connected with all of the different kinds of work and programming that we do as an organization across the country. And I think Josh is going to go ahead and type those sites into the chat box, so look out for those. Additionally, you are part of the greater national service community and the movements of conservation and stewardship. From local programs to conservation legacy, to other core and national service organizations, to national advocacy and funding support from organizations like the CORE Network, CNCS, and AmeriCorps, we rely heavily on storytelling through the field media that our members and our communications team produce, especially around national days of service like MLK Day, 9/11 Day of Remembrance, and others. Your storytelling plays a huge role in our success as an organization. This map shows all the locations Conservation Legacy programs worked during 2018. The green dots represent crew, project locations, or intern placements, and the orange dots represent program offices. And we just created this visual to help illustrate the nationwide community that you are part of within Stewards and Conservation Legacy. All right, so what is field media? Well, first and foremost, it's your voice and your story, and we really want to hear from you as an individual member. It's also a really great opportunity for influence. We can achieve this influence through media features, partnerships, project reports, and more. And field media can be structured or organic. So an example of structured field media would be required documentation, so the reports that you guys submit, or it could be organic. So that could look like a site visit from a staff member or interacting with a member of the public during a volunteer event. Here we have just a couple of examples of Stewards members featured in local media outlets. So communication of compelling stories from the field vastly increases the exposure our programs have and thus engages more people. Your position as a VISTA provides you a really unique opportunity to communicate about the connection between your experience, the work you're doing during your term of service, and the impact on the community or the environment to the rest of the world. So when more people are aware of the impact that we have as an organization and as individuals, the more support and advocacy we have for our programs and for this kind of work as a whole. And it really does all start with the voices of our members on the ground, which is all of you. Our members are truly the most important part of our organization. You guys are our foundation. So in these examples of field media, we've got an article in the Register Herald with the Beckley mayor reading a proclamation alongside AmeriCorps Vista's Lilibeth Fuentes and Samantha Cadeville from Florida. And in the middle, we've got a story in the El Pasoan about an AmeriCorps experience. And on the right, we just have an intern profile of one of our geoscientists in the park. And there's a couple more examples of field media here. On the left, we have an article in the Virgin Islands Daily News about Stewards Vista Aria, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who helped facilitate a junior achievement camp session where students were able to brainstorm solutions for some problems that the local community was facing. And it was all meant to help empower youth. And I think Aria is on the call with us today, so I'd like to put the spotlight on you for a second, Aria, to tell us about this volunteer event. And if you wouldn't mind unmuting about this, that'd be awesome.
Rose, I think you cut out there for a little bit. You were calling on Aria.
Yes. Sorry about that. Aria, if you're on the call with us today, would you mind unmuting to tell us a little bit about this junior achievement camp session that you helped facilitate?
Hey, hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, hi, my name is Aria. For the junior achievement, for the junior achievement program that we set up, basically we gathered a bunch of local high school students together, and we all sat down and tried to brainstorm ideas that the youth could put into place about recycling and trying to make businesses off of recycled products that we have here in the community, because recycling is a big issue and it's very expensive. So we wanted them to start thinking about solutions to that problem that we have.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Arya.
No problem.
Great. So yeah, and then on the right, there is a photo from an article in the Times Standard, which is the North Coast daily newspaper. And this is an aerial photo of 1,200 Humboldt students who spent a day on the beach removing invasive species. And this volunteer event was also coordinated by one of our Vistas. So these two media highlights further illustrate the impact and reach that media spotlights can offer. 1 2-minute interview on a local news channel or an article in the local paper could reach an audience of thousands, potentially informing the public about your organization for the first time and deepening the connection of the local community to the work of your organization. Or it can inform the public about innovative research they weren't aware of, or spark their interest in science or sustainability, conservation. The outcomes are pretty limitless. And these important connections all start with members like you on the ground telling your stories. All right, so let's move on from media to focus on how to create high quality images and document your unique experience during your term of service. Before we jump into this section, take a minute to answer the poll that Josh is going to be entering into the chat box. This poll is going to ask what platform you currently use to document your term of service. Or sorry, not platform, but what do you use to document your service, whether it's a cell phone, a personal camera, or your organization's camera? And then Josh, if you want to just let us know what the results of that poll are, that would be great.
That sounds good. I'll give them a few minutes here to respond. The first 17 responses in, we have 14 of them that use their cell phone.
Yep, that sounds about right to me. Definitely, cell phones are an awesome tool that we have nowadays that are capable of taking really high quality photos and creating high quality videos. Are you still getting any?
Still a few coming in. I'll go ahead and cut it off right here and go and put the results in the chat.
Great.
And it's on there. It is 19 cell phone, 3 personal camera, 1 organization's camera.
Okay, that's about what I anticipated. And so I personally really believe that the camera doesn't make the photo, the person taking it makes the photo. And I really think that we're all capable of making really high quality media just using our cell phones. We don't need necessarily to have the latest DSLR camera to really do a good job of documenting our terms of service. So let's talk about some tips for how to take some good photos. So the first one, it might seem obvious, but forgetting to charge batteries is a mistake even professional photographers make, and it can totally ruin your shoot. I've done this and it sucks. Before you go out for a volunteer event or a work day or just any situation that you want to photograph, remember to fully charge your phone or camera's battery and make space on your SD card or in your phone's internal storage. Try to remember that photography is fundamentally just a process of capturing the way that light falls on a subject. So a great subject in poor light will always look bad. Smartphones do best in natural light and they really struggle in low light, and using the built-in flash on your phone almost always creates bad images. So try to avoid doing that. If you're outside, the best light is during what photographers call the golden hour, which is an hour after sunrise and an hour before sunset, but there's leeway on this. If you have to take a photo outside during like the harsh light in the middle of the day, look for open shade, not dappled like under trees or like really harsh, full, bright sunlight. And try to pay close attention to where the light and shadows fall on your subject because they will really be accentuated in your photo. Things you can control when you take a picture are the light you shoot in and the angle you shoot from. And once you understand that, even a smartphone can be used to take great photos. Please don't add filters to your photos before submitting them. Just submit the highest resolution, untouched images, and take a lot of photos, but please only choose your best to submit. This is another tip that might seem obvious, but give your lens a quick wipe off before you shoot. It can really be a bummer if you forget to do that and later you submit your photos and you realize that they all have a smudge on them. Sometimes you can't see in the phone and you don't notice until you upload to the computer later. So just give your lens a quick wipe down. And then if you're taking photos on your phone, don't use the zoom feature. This degrades the quality of your images and it will make them grainy. Don't be afraid to just get closer to your subjects. Whenever possible, include logos in your images to give the viewer some insight and some immediate context. If the viewer is able to see the logos that you or the subjects of your photo are wearing, you can immediately convey context. And without logos, it could be a photo of any person out for a hike or at an event. But once we see those logos, that really gives the viewer some insight as to like, okay, they're with a group and they can look into AmeriCorps or Stewards if they don't recognize that logo on their own. We want to show both the hard work that our Vistas accomplish and the lifestyle and culture aspect of the position. So we want to show and share the authentic experience. And this is best done really by taking candid photos where you or the subjects of the photo are unposed. Selfies and posed shots can be great, but you should prioritize taking photos that feel natural because these are by far the most engaging. Any photos that you submit that you, your coworkers, or any members of the public are working with tools should have full PPE, which is personal protective equipment, visible. So please ensure that you and the subjects of your photos are all wearing the correct PPE. You can refer to the Conservation Legacy Guidelines for PPE if you are unfamiliar with what's required for any given type of work, and you can definitely ask your supervisor for those guidelines. But that's a really important one, especially if you're working with volunteers who are wearing PPE. Sometimes you're just going to need to periodically remind everybody to make sure that they've got all the appropriate PPE on at all times. All right, so I want to go ahead and ask the group, what's wrong with these photos? What could the photographer have done differently in these situations to emphasize context and make these images more visually engaging? So go ahead and type your answers into the chat box, and Josh is going to read a few of those off.
Daisy says show faces, Megan faces. Megan, show people's faces. I think we got a pretty good pattern here. No PPV, no logos. A logo would be great here. Different angles and get closer. High quality photos, change angle.
Yep.
Check
those are all really great responses, and they're all correct for sure. These photos, when I'm looking at them, I don't really have any idea what's going on. I don't know who these people are or where they are, what they're doing. I definitely liked that PPE comment. I don't really see any PPE. I also see somebody doing some labor in shorts, which I don't think is correct PPE. So yeah, all of those responses are definitely correct. I think those comments about the faces are the most, that's what stands out to me the most when I look at these photos. It's hard for a viewer to connect or relate to a photograph if we can't see the person's face. This isn't always true, of course, but in general, as a rule, try to include your subject's face whenever possible. And yeah, like you guys mentioned, there's no logos really, so these photos aren't giving me any context. It's unclear what these people are doing. We want to strive to convey context whenever we take photos, and imagine that the people who are going to see your photo are just complete novices to the work that you're doing, and try to take a photo that they would still be able to understand and relate to, even without prior knowledge of you or the work you're doing. This is a pretty quick, easy tip to make your photos more interesting, and that is to play with the depth of field. So you can convey you can convey space, distance, and depth, as well as frame your subject instantly by putting something in the foreground. So tree branches, flowers, plants work especially well for this, but really just about anything works. So you can really get creative and play around with it, but it's a really great way to make your photos stand out. And something I like to think about when I'm looking at these images is, would these photos still be engaging if there was not something in the foreground, like if it was just the photos of the subjects? And personally, I think no, they wouldn't be as interesting. So that's just a quick, easy tip to make your photos more visually engaging. All right, so the perspective you choose when you set up a photo can really make or break the final image. So what makes these photos engaging to you? Can anybody guess where the camera was set up for these shots or how it was held? Go ahead and type your response again in the chat box for those. So what makes these photos engaging? And where might they have set up the cameras?
Seth says low. Megan, level with the subject. Centrally, happy or engaged faces. From lower angled to eye-ish level. Get on the subject's level.
Yeah, I like that one. Awesome. Thanks for your response, everybody. Yeah, it looks like all of these shots were taken from either below the subject's eye level or at eye level. And personally, I feel like they're engaging because I just feel like I'm right there with these subjects in these photos. And it's just a lot more engaging versus, can you imagine if that first picture was taken by somebody who was just standing up looking down? You would not have been able to see that person's face, and it just wouldn't have been visually very interesting. You'll really be surprised at how shooting from your knees or from a higher vantage point or holding your camera above your head can completely change your image. And I think it's important to remember too that sometimes laying on the ground and shooting up gets you the best angle when you're photographing people who are bending over while working, or if they're wearing hard hats. Like in those photos we saw earlier where we couldn't see anyone's face. This is partially because the subjects were all bent over working, and it's hard to get somebody's face in that shot. But if you lay on the ground or get super low and hold the camera low and shoot up, that can really help get your subject's face in the photo. If you're able, use a tripod and your phone or camera's self-timer to take photos versus taking all selfies. Tripods for smartphones can be found really inexpensive online, like under $10. So I recommend doing some research on those. And if you don't have a tripod or you don't want to purchase one, you can carefully, safely balance your phone using whatever is around you, like a rock or a tree, or ask a friend or a coworker to take some photos of you. Remember, we really want to see you at work, which can be hard to do since often you're the subject and the photographer for these images, but try to utilize your coworkers or that self-timer to work around this. Oh, whoops, one more thing to say about that. Tripods will also really come in handy when you're shooting video. It's next to impossible to handhold a cell phone and shoot video without introducing a lot of camera shake, which looks unprofessional and it's distracting and sometimes can make your viewer feel seasick. So yeah, definitely try to utilize a tripod or balance your phone safely, and just try to avoid hand holding it when you're able to. Okay, let's talk about some tips and tricks for shooting video on your camera or phone. So again, before shooting video, check the battery life of your phone or camera and make sure you have a lot of extra space on your memory card or your phone's internal storage. Video files take up a lot of space really quickly, so make sure you're planning ahead before you shoot like a long video. When you're shooting video, please shoot horizontal if you're using your cell phone. This most closely matches the common video size of 1920 by 1080. And if you shoot horizontal, that will allow you to fit more in your frame as well. This doesn't apply if you're shooting video for an Instagram story update. You can shoot vertical for that. But other than Instagram stories, please try to shoot video horizontally. A great option for a bright glow without being too harsh. Evening and morning often have some of the best light for photography and videography, but that's not always the case. Your judgment. And backlighting a subject is usually recommended because this tends to turn the subject into a silhouette. But it really
Rose, we've lost you again. We heard most of the natural light box, but we aren't hearing you at the moment.
Okay, sorry everybody. Are you able to hear me now?
Can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that. So I'll just go ahead and move into again. If you're using your camera, reduces the resolution, so it's personal with your subject. And then one more plug for using a tripod. If you don't have one, something else, a tree branch, just try to avoid hand holding your device when you're shooting. This is a really important tip to keep in mind. Be very mindful of photographing minors. Stewards and Conservation Legacy require a signed photo release for all individuals under the age of 18. So ask your supervisor for photo release forms if you need them, and make sure that your park is having any volunteers or members of the public sign photo releases before you photograph them. So writing regular reports is your main way of storytelling in your role, and it's incredibly important to the success of stewards and Conservation Legacy as a whole. The reports you write could have a huge impact and reach. And sorry, it sounds like we're getting a little bit of feedback or something. I think somebody might need to mute themselves. So when you are writing reports and blog posts, these are generally shared publicly. So keep that in mind. Please be professional and appropriate, and try not to use language or terms that the general public would not be familiar with, or if you do, just define them. So there's a chance at some point throughout your service term you will have some type of interaction with press or media. And as we saw earlier in the presentation, all of those different press hits that different stewards members have gotten, it's definitely, there's a chance you'll be interacting with media. This is an excellent opportunity to elevate your voice and your individual experience, and to convey the mission and concept of Conservation Legacy and stewards and your organization. But keep in mind that you're not required to be interviewed, photographed, or go on video if you don't want to. So as a rule, before you interact with press, please notify your supervisor. And if you are present in a crisis situation and the media is involved, direct them to your supervisor. Don't go on camera or on record during a crisis situation, especially if events are still unfolding. So as a VISTA, there's a good chance that you will be tasked with maintaining or at least contributing to your park, organization, or nonprofit social media accounts. Remember that the most important feature of social media is to engage with your audience, the public. Accounts that have thousands of followers but little engagement are not as effective as small accounts with a community of responsive followers. So what social media platforms do you all use? Josh is going to add another poll to the chat box. Click that link and let us know which social media platforms you use the most, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or a different platform.
All right, poll is up. We got some responses coming in. Looks like the early leader is Instagram with 6. Let's see how's it going here. All righty, I'm typing up the responses now. Sorry, that's my daughter in the background. All right, we have Facebook with 6, Twitter with 1, Instagram with 12, and other got 0.
Okay, yep, that's about what I expected. Instagram is definitely probably the most popular social media platform for folks from our generation. And I think it can be a really incredible tool for communicating with the public about your organization. So yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, everybody. So let's talk about some social media tips and tricks. Like I mentioned before, you really want to engage with your audience. So try to write captions that prompt your followers to respond in the comment section. When you do receive comments, try to respond quickly to them. This earns you points with social media algorithms, which are these like mathematical rules that determine what content you see first. So an example of that is when you shop for a product online and then Instagram serves you an ad for it in your feed later that day, which is super creepy to me. Anyway, when the algorithm determines that you have an engaging account, they'll boost your posts, which results in more followers. So algorithm that you're engaged. Speaking of the algorithms, so an to share your content and have not just only have photos of people, but keep in mind that photos that include people's faces are really going to be what get boosted the most. Not from your social media pages, can you use this is an effective way to both engage your audience and elevate their it helps you create posts when you're low on creativity and kind of maintain the voice or the brand of your social media account. Keeps it relatable and down to earth. Your goal is to connect with your audience on a human level. So you just want to be real and authentic. And so a great way to do that is to utilize this user-generated content. So what I mean by that is if one of your followers, if you're searching hashtags, the location that serving your, and you see one of your followers has posted something, a photo of it, you can reach out to them through DMs, or if you're on Facebook, then Facebook Messenger, and ask if it's okay if you repost that content. It gives people this kind of like 10 seconds of fame, which people love. We do that really often with our social media accounts on Conservation Legacy. And I've never personally had somebody say we couldn't use their photo. So, but it's a good idea to just reach out and make sure that that's okay before you do that. Definitely don't forget to post on National Service Days. Your supervisor will let you know when these days are coming up and give you an idea of what content you should create. Try to use location tags on Instagram whenever possible. This also helps to boost your posts. So a location tag, that's when you are making your post, you write your caption, and then it's possible to put in the location of where you shot the photo. So make sure that you do that whenever you're able to, because it just helps boost your post. With all social media platforms, my personal recommendation is to aim for no more than 2 to 3 posts per week. You want to post in the morning on Facebook and Twitter, and then the end of the day on Instagram, just for like the highest traffic times. These are general suggestions that are based on social media stats from a few months ago. And like I said, the algorithm changes really frequently, so you have to keep on track of that. If you have time to monitor engagement on your site's page, you may notice certain times of the day or days of the week that work best for your accounts, and then you can aim for those. This really just depends on how much time you have to monitor engagement. If you're strapped for time and have to choose which social media platforms to prioritize, my advice is to focus on Instagram and Facebook. Twitter is a great platform, but it's most effective if you have time to post a lot. Most people are not going to have that much time. So personally, I recommend focusing on Instagram and Facebook. So let's talk about hashtags a little bit. With hashtags, these are a really great way to boost the visibility of your posts, but you want to try to limit it to 3 or 4 of each. The more hashtags you add to your post, they kind of will end up looking spammy, or like it was generated by a computer, or just distracting to see this big block of hashtags in there. So try to just choose 3 or 4 strategic hashtags. There's also websites out there that you can type in hashtags and it will tell you how popular they are. You obviously want to choose some of the more popular ones because people will actually be searching those and could come across your posts. So some hashtags to keep in mind: you guys want to tag, use the hashtag AmeriCorps Vista, hashtag Stewards IPP, hashtag Volunteer Conservation Legacy. Keep in mind on Facebook, direct tagging is weird and it doesn't always work. So give it a try. If it doesn't work, then just type in the name of whatever page it is that you want to tag, and people will just have to search on their own. Because yeah, not all of the direct tags work like they do on Instagram. I'm not really totally sure why that is. And then also keep in mind that tags change from Instagram to Facebook too. So the tag that you use on Instagram is not necessarily going to work on Facebook. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Instagram. A great example of a solid Instagram account is Saguaro National Park. There are multiple staff members and interns that run it, so there's multiple different people contributing to it, but the content really flows and it's got a lot of coherency. The images are high quality, the captions are really engaging, and the park has over 100,000 followers. So I like to recommend that Instagram account as just a model that you can use as a frame of reference or for some inspiration. Yeah, so try to write captions that engage your audience, don't sound computer generated, and convey the humble human experience of the work that we do and our organization as a whole. Another tip to keep in mind: it used to be that you could hide your hashtags in the comments section to make your post appear less cluttered, but the algorithm has changed and this is no longer the case. So just choose a few key hashtags, leave it at that. And when you're posting to internal platforms, please be sure to tag AmeriCorps, Conservation Legacy, and Stewards. And with Instagram, it's really about high quality photos and videos. It's a highly visual platform. So you really want to focus on the imagery on this platform and keep your captions pretty short, and keep in mind people have pretty short attention spans, and then also always be aiming for engagement. Okay, Twitter. Don't be afraid to tweet text-only posts. You could do a question, an observation, or an open prompt asking for replies. You're really aiming for engagement again, just as you are with all social media platforms. But don't get too comfortable with tweets. The average lifespan of a tweet is only about 18 minutes, and there's over 7,000 new tweets every single second. So the shelf life of one tweet is 4 times shorter than anything you post to Facebook. And of course, if you've used Twitter, you know that you're really limited for the number of characters that you can use in the Twitter post. I can't remember offhand how many that is, but it's just a very short, very limited space that you have to utilize. Keep that in mind when you're using Twitter. It's more text friendly. So in Instagram, when you're using Instagram, you're going to want to focus on visual media, really high quality photos and videos. Twitter is just for these like short text blasts that you're going to send out, and then Facebook is going to be more in depth. So you can spend more time writing out your caption, really go into detail. You can link to other websites or partnering organizations. You can really just go into a lot more depth with a Facebook post. You do want to try to find a balance between promotional posts for events and non-promotional ones. It's always a good idea on any platform to diversify the content that you post. So make sure you're not always just posting photos of people's faces to your Instagram. Make sure you're not always posting these really long novels to Facebook. Just try to shake it up with all of your platforms and keep people engaged. Oh, there we go. That's that maximum word count for Twitter is 240. And since Instagram is primarily visual, it's really not formatted for that long text post, but you can get more wordy in Facebook. And while we're on the subject, don't forget to follow our accounts. So be sure to check out these tags and follow our accounts either now if you've got a minute or after the presentation is up. And everybody, let's also take a minute to add your organization's social media handles into the chat box so you can follow each other too. So go ahead and take a second to type in your organization's social handle. If you have one, make sure to specify which platform it's for: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or a different platform. Awesome. You guys can keep going ahead and typing those into the chat box as you have time. So I just want to thank everybody for joining me for this presentation, and thank you for sharing your stories with us. Without your story, there's no conservation legacy. So we're really grateful that you all share your experiences with us. And now I just want to go ahead and open it up to questions or comments. If anybody has them, go ahead and type them in the chat box.
No questions so far, but a lot of people are entering their tags, which is nice.
Cool, yeah. Definitely go ahead and follow each other. It's a great way to stay connected and inspire each other. I do want to let everybody know that if you're especially interested in photography or videography or really anything communications related, you can totally feel free to reach out to me. I would love to talk to you more. We have some different ways we could get you involved in conservation legacy communications initiatives. So Josh, if you wouldn't mind typing my email into the chat box, that would be awesome. Sure. So folks can, yeah, please feel free to reach out.
Any questions for Rose? I'm sure tons of you are participating or supporting in outreach for your organization. So this is a great time to utilize a fantastic resource.
Rose, yesterday on the in our open space, we had a question about when do you get a feeling you're doing too much? Is that ever a concern?
Yeah, it is. I definitely think it's possible to post too much to social media. I don't know if any of you have experience with following an account that posts too much. Personally, I'll just unfollow them because it's annoying if I just see their stuff like throughout every day. So like I mentioned a few slides back, I like to try to aim for 2 to 4 posts on each platform maximum per week. And honestly, I think 2 per platform is plenty. So I think the way that you would know you are doing too much is if people just aren't interacting with your posts. If they're not liking them or they're not commenting, if you see your engagement start to go down instead of up, I think that could be a sign that you're doing too much.
Excellent. We got another question from Megan Singleton, and she said, what kind of visual content would you like to see when we're all quarantined and unable to be at our site?
That's an excellent question. We actually just created a video that's a compilation of some different stewards members who are talking about what their positions looked like before quarantine happened, and now we're talking about how their positions have shifted to adapt during quarantine. And so that's actually featured on our Conservation Legacy YouTube channel and the Stewards YouTube channel. So if you search either of those on YouTube, you should be able to find that video, and it's pretty inspiring to watch. But I think that is a good example of like, how can we create content now that some of us aren't able to leave our houses or not able to engage with our organization in person. A lot of people now are focusing more on digital content, which means that this presentation, some of the things we've talked about, especially social media, are even more important, or even more people are really focused on those now because that's the main way that we have to connect with each other. So it's going to require more creativity and thinking outside of the box. We can't necessarily be having these big public events, volunteer events and stuff like that, but there's still so many opportunities for us to connect with the public via social media. So I just throw out that video as one example of a way that these members were able to create these little interviews where they explained what their positions were and now how they're shifting during COVID-19. And I think it was really relatable for people. So yeah, I guess to sum that all up, my response is it's going to require creativity, but I definitely think that we can still be really successful.
Great. Julia has a question. She said, what does it mean for engagement when likes are increasing, but no one is commenting or creating user-generated content?
That's a really good question. So obviously likes are one way that you can measure your engagement, and you do want to try to get lots of likes on your photos. I think that signifies that you've got some really engaging visual content. So maybe if you posted like a really beautiful photo and everybody's liking it, but nobody's commenting on it. So that could mean maybe the caption wasn't very engaging. One thing that I really like to incorporate into almost every caption is just a way, like a prompt for the viewers to want to engage with it. So I really like to ask questions, or just leave like an open-ended prompt for people versus just captioning the photo. So say, for example, you took this beautiful photo of a tree or something and you got a ton of likes on it, and the caption was, something about like the scientific name of that tree, and nobody commented on it because maybe they just didn't feel engaged by that content. But maybe if you had the caption something like, this is this type of tree, what's your favorite type of tree? Or, I mean, this is not the best example, but you get the idea, is to like really try to incorporate like these open-ended prompts and just like motivate your viewers to want to comment.
All right. I got a statement here. This is actually from Martin Lively. He stated that Instagram hashtags can be hidden by adding a period per line for 3 lines, then putting hashtags beneath those. They will be hidden with more button to show them.
Yeah, I have seen a lot of people do this before. So I think this is sort of a personal preference thing. I guess just from my
Rose, you've cut out again. Can you hear us? Rose, are you there?
So sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. I'm so sorry, everybody. My internet is just not cooperating today. Okay, so we were talking about hiding the comments with that tactic of using 3 periods to move the comments lower and kind of out of view. And I was just saying that I think it's kind of about personal preference. So that is a really good way to hide your hashtags for sure. For me personally, when I see posts like that, even if the hashtags are separated out by those 3 periods, these are like line breaks for those of you who aren't.
Rose, you've cut out again.
Caroline, while waiting for Rose to come back, maybe we should put the QR code up for the evaluation and the surveys.
Sure. Yep, I will go ahead and do that. So yeah, so while we wait to hear Rose again, just as a reminder to everyone, this is officially the end of Vista Training Virtual Week. We by no means are. Rose, is that you?
Yes, I'm so sorry, everybody. I think maybe the best way to go forward is just I can respond to some of these questions and send them out to the group afterwards. I just don't want to keep cutting out on you guys.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. Yeah, that works perfectly. And if everyone wants to just keep adding those in, and of course we've got Rose's contact information if folks have longer questions for you. So I guess we'll say thanks so much for sharing, Rose, and we'll get you off the internet so you can take a break.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It was great to talk to you. And thank you so much for being patient and bearing with me for these internet problems.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. It was great.
Great. So yeah, just a couple quick things before we hop off. This being the end of the official week of Vista Training, but knowing that we have plenty more topics in store, we are working out that schedule now. Know that many of those topics will be expanded beyond your sort of cohort here. You are the folks who haven't attended a Vista Training just yet, but we'll be expanding that audience to include other current Vistas who may just be interested, as well as possible other service members within Stewards. So that'll be exciting to have some new voices on the phone as well. We would love for you all to fill out the training evaluation. The QR code on the screen will get you there. And of course, Lily will send out a traditional link as well so that you can do that. We really work to improve and form our training from session to session, utilizing this survey evaluation. So it's vital that you share what went great, what didn't go great, what you wanted to see, what you didn't see. And of course, we'll also be using that content to inform those additional topics that we'll be having later on this summer. So while we have a few in mind, we really want to make sure that we are aware of what you need to hear, what you want to hear, and what can support you throughout the next several months with who knows what, teleservice, in person, something in between. So please make sure you go and fill out that training evaluation. We do have a awesome prize that we will give. So if you complete the survey, submit it, your name will go into a drawing, and we'll be having some fun new swag, probably some stuff with our old logo, some with our new logo. And knowing that our new logo is super, super new, you might be the first of 1 or 2 people to actually get a hold of that logo. So make sure that you fill out that survey for us, submit it in, and if you, of course, have any questions about training or any of the topics we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out to your program coordinator or to Lily as well. One more reminder, the box link that's been sent to you several times has all of the recordings of these sessions, all of the resources, slideshows, etc. for those sessions. And knowing that a handful of you were joining calls late this week for other reasons or IT issues, that's a really great resource to go back and get yourself caught up. So those are just a couple of quick things. I want to say thanks so much for you all coming, being flexible, working through the IT glitches and the different ways that we were able to engage you, and knowing that we just appreciate so much having this space to engage with you. Always our hope and pleasure to see you in person, but without that opportunity, this was a great second choice. So I just want to say again, thanks for everyone for joining us, and we're really looking forward to additional topics in the future. And before we say happy Friday, have a good weekend. Anyone Vista team have any additional things we want to convey before we let them go?
Yeah, Trish here. Just wanted to say thanks everybody for coming. We had great participation from you all, and thanks for being the guinea pigs to this